Harry told us his truth. Now he's telling us his truth about his truth because he says we're not telling the truth about his truth.
If you're a man, you're not going to allow yourself to be taken over by a woman with everything. I mean, you look at...
And every single time I've tried to do it privately, there have been briefings and leakings and planting of stories against me and my wife.
3 weeks. That's all it took. 3 painful weeks for Harry to go from thinking he had the perfect love story to realizing he might have been living inside someone else's plan the whole time. And it all started with one thing, a tiny detail in a yacht photo that most people scrolled right past. But Harry couldn't. Something about it wouldn't let him go. He'd zoom in, study it, leave, come back hours later and look again. Like the image was hiding something from him. And here's the thing. It was because what Harry found when he finally saw it changed everything. He thought he knew about the woman he married, the friend he trusted, and the life they'd built together. This is the story of how one man discovered a past he was never meant to see. Before we get into this, hit that like button and subscribe, because what Harry found, the yacht clubs, the money trail, the voicemails he ignored, you're not going to believe where this goes. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Now let's dive in. For 3 weeks straight, Harry kept coming back to those Croatia yacht photos. They'd been everywhere online, splashed across gossip sites, social media feeds, entertainment blogs. The internet had moved on within days, the way it always does. But Harry, he was stuck. Most people looked once, maybe twice, and scrolled past. But Harry couldn't. There was this pull he couldn't explain. He'd pull up the images on his phone at random times during the day, zoom in, study each corner in detail, then close it. Tell himself he was being ridiculous. An hour later, he'd be back doing the same thing.
And the natural thing we can see is that he really isn't happy. This is his breaking point, I believe.
Zoom out, look at the whole scene, try to see what his gut was screaming at him about. Zoom back in, leave the room, try to focus on something else, come back, stare some more. It became this obsessive loop he couldn't break. His wife probably thought he was losing it. Maybe he was. And the strangest part, Harry didn't even know what he was looking for. He just felt it. This nagging sense the pieces weren't fitting right, like the photo was holding back a secret. Like when you forget someone's name and it sits right on the tip of your tongue, driving you crazy. That's what this felt like, except worse. Then one night, late, when the house was quiet and everyone else had gone to bed, his eyes finally caught it. There, pushed off to the side of the yacht's deck, half hidden behind some railing, was a small navy blue canvas bag. Nothing flashy, didn't scream for attention. Just sitting there in the background where most people's eyes would never land. But the gold lettering stitched across the front hit Harry like ice water poured down his spine. Soho House. His stomach flipped hard. Here's the thing, this wasn't just some random rich person's yacht. This was a Soho House member yacht. The same elite, members-only club that Meghan had lived inside for years. The same place where rooms, events, dinners, and whispered conversations all carried weight and meaning. Where connections weren't made by accident. They were carefully, deliberately engineered. And suddenly, what once felt like a coincidence didn't feel that way anymore.
When you marry a woman, that person should strengthen the relationships in your family, not fracture them. It is a huge...
Harry's chest got tight, his heart started hammering. He knew right then he wasn't going to sleep until he understood what this meant. What this bag was doing there, what it connected to. So he opened a new tab on his laptop, and with trembling fingers that could barely hit the right keys, he typed 3 names that had never looked suspicious to him until this exact moment. Soho House, Marcus Anderson, Meghan Markle. He stared at the search bar for a second, almost afraid of what might come up. Then he hit enter. The results started loading, and what appeared on his screen would turn everything Harry thought he knew about his life completely upside down. In Harry's mind, Marcus Anderson had always been just Meghan's quirky friend from Toronto. You know, the stylish guy who loved social events, threw great parties, knew everyone friendly, charming, someone who seemed genuinely happy for them when they got together. Harry never thought twice about him. But what he found in those search results, it painted a completely different picture. Old society blogs that hadn't been updated in years. Deleted interviews he had to dig through cached pages to find. Archived magazines buried behind broken links, the kind you have to hunt for like you're putting together pieces of a puzzle nobody wanted solved. Harry clicked through page after page, and the story kept repeating itself. Marcus wasn't just in the scene, he was the scene. People described him as a social connector, someone who linked people trying to climb with those already sitting at the top.
Wasn't there some speculation that she was on Epstein's yacht at one point in time? There was like photos with her and Prince Andrew way back in the day.
He'd bring newcomers into rooms with producers, investors, people with established names and serious influence. One article called him the man who makes sure the right people meet at the right events. This wasn't happening by accident. It was all deliberate. And here's what got Harry. Marcus didn't just attend these parties and galas. He curated the guest lists. He decided who got into which room, who sat where at dinner, who ended up in conversation at the bar later that night. He engineered the moments that looked casual but weren't. Harry leaned back in his chair, his stomach sinking. How had he never questioned any of this? Marcus was everywhere. At their wedding, sitting prominently where he could see everything in photos from events Harry barely remembered attending, hovering in the background of moments that felt private, but somehow weren't. The more Harry read, the more a thought crept into his mind, one that scared him more than he wanted to admit. What if Marcus hadn't just been Meghan's friend all these years? What if he'd been orchestrating things from the very beginning? And if that was true, what else had Harry missed? This was the part Harry didn't want to believe. Everything he'd found online could have been exaggerated, right? Bloggers love drama. Journalists stretch the truth. Maybe people just misunderstood Marcus, didn't see him the way Harry did. Maybe there was an innocent explanation for all of it. But deep down, Harry knew he was lying to himself. So late one night, when the house was completely quiet and Meghan had been asleep for hours, Harry did something he hadn't done in years. He scrolled through his old contacts until he found a name he'd almost forgotten. A guy from his London party days. A former Soho House member back when Harry was younger and way less careful about the company he kept. This guy knew that world inside and out, and he wouldn't lie.
You might have heard lots of rumours swirling about the couple, especially over the weekend, that their relationship is on the rocks.
Harry's thumb hovered over the call button for a solid minute. Once he made this call, asked these questions, there was no going back. He'd know, and maybe he didn't want to know. But he pressed it anyway. The phone rang 3 times. Then a familiar voice answered, groggy and confused. Harry? Maid, it's past midnight. You all right? Harry's voice came out barely above a whisper. I need to ask you about Marcus Anderson. There was silence on the other end. Not the kind where you're thinking. The kind where you know exactly what you need to say, but you're deciding whether you should. It stretched on for what felt like forever. Then his friend sighed, long and heavy, the kind of exhale that told Harry everything before a single word was spoken. Yeah, I figured you'd call about him eventually. What came next was 40 minutes Harry will never forget. His friend told him things that made his stomach turn, connected dots he'd been too blind to see, painted a picture Harry had refused to look at until now. In his friend's words, Marcus runs what people in that world call a social training program. Not for etiquette or table manners, for access. He targets ambitious women who want to break into elite circles but don't know the unspoken rules. He finds them, his friend explained, voice careful and measured. the ones with ambition, the ones who want to climb. Then he teaches them everything they need to know. How to dress for certain events so you blend in with old money. How to navigate conversations with influential people without sounding desperate or out of place. How to move through a room so people notice you, but don't question why you're there. Marcus brings them into Soho House.
Harry is trying to save face in public, but I think even, he can't.
Gives them memberships they could never afford on their own. Opens doors to exclusive events where the real power players show up. And here's the part that made Harry's blood run cold. His friend mentioned that Marcus somehow always knows who's attending what event and when. Not just public events, private ones. Charity galas with limited guest lists. Polo matches where only certain people get access. Intimate gatherings that don't get announced anywhere. Marcus has access, calendars, rosters, information most people would never see. He uses that information to create opportunities, strategic introductions that look natural but aren't. He's brilliant at it, Harry's friend said, almost sounding impressed. He'll make sure a woman he's guiding ends up at the same small dinner party as someone who can change her life. Makes it seem like fate. Harry's mind was racing. He started thinking backward through the years. Polo matches in 2013, charity events in 2014, private gatherings he barely remembered, and suddenly he was seeing Marcus in all of them. Background photos Harry had never paid attention to before. Marcus in the corner, watching, always close to the action but never the center of it. Events where Harry had shown up. His friend's voice broke through his thoughts. Harry, listen. Marcus doesn't leave networking to chance. That's not how he operates. When people end up in a room together, when a conversation happens at just the right moment, he probably set it up. That's his whole thing. It's what he's built his reputation on. Harry sat there in the dark, phone pressed to his ear, feeling like the floor had just dropped out from under him. After that phone call, Harry couldn't sleep. His brain wouldn't shut off. He kept replaying what his friend had told him, turning it over in his mind.
Harry is whipped. Do you know the expression whipped?
I'm familiar with the phrase.
I won't use the full expression. Meghan.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. And I wasn't.
But then another question started gnawing at him. One he'd never really thought about before. How did Meghan afford all of this? Listen, Harry wasn't trying to be nosy about money. But the more he thought about it, the less it made sense. Constant flights across Europe, London, Barcelona, Istanbul, Miami designer outfits at each event, never wearing the same thing twice. Soho House memberships in multiple cities, which aren't exactly cheap 5-star accommodations during yacht weeks when everyone else in her income bracket was staying at normal hotels or crashing with friends. And she was there, at the events Marcus organized, the exclusive gatherings, the places where the right people showed up, perfectly dressed each time, fitting in seamlessly with people who had way more money than she did. Harry knew what suits paid actors. He'd looked it up once out of curiosity, back when they first started dating. The show was successful, sure, but it wasn't making anyone rich. Definitely not fly to Europe every other month and wear Givenchy rich. The numbers weren't working out in his head, so Harry reached out quietly to someone he knew was still connected to Soho House Toronto. Someone who owed him a favor and wouldn't ask too many questions. The conversation was brief, careful, both of them dancing around what Harry really wanted to know without saying it directly. But what Harry learned made him go completely cold. Meghan's membership, fully covered. Not discounted, not partially subsidized. Completely, entirely free. For 5 straight years, she'd never paid a single membership fee. Not once. $0 out of her own pocket. Harry sat frozen after that conversation ended, his heart pounding in his ears.
Someone wanted a lot of attention, and now they got it.
That was the whole episode.
That was the ep.
Yeah.
That was the premise.
Is that what it was?
Like, we want privacy, and they keep going on every night.
Who covered it? He'd asked, trying to keep his voice steady. There'd been this pause, the kind that tells you the answer before you hear it. Nervous hesitation. Then his contact spoke carefully, choosing each word like he was walking through a minefield. Marcus has arrangements, ways of giving particular people access without them going through the usual payment channels. Corporate accounts that don't show up on normal records, approvals that happen behind closed doors. Harry felt sick. In his mind, this meant someone had been investing in Meghan, not just helping her out as a friend, actively funding her transformation from a cable TV actress into someone who could move effortlessly through the most exclusive social circles in the world. He grabbed a pen and paper, his hands slightly shaking, started writing down what he could remember about her lifestyle over the years they'd known each other. International flights, Toronto to London, London to New York, New York to Spain. Had to be 24 trips a year, maybe more. That's what, 10 grand minimum? Designer wardrobes that got photographed everywhere she went? Another 10, 15,000 easily. Soho House memberships in Toronto, London, New York, those run about 5,000 each annually. Luxury hotels, yacht week accommodations, styling, hair, makeup for every high-profile event. The list kept growing, line after line after line. When he finally stopped, Harry looked down at the total he'd calculated. $70,000 a year, bare minimum. Probably more if he was being honest about all the things he didn't know about or couldn't see. Meghan's suit's salary, maybe $50,000 a year if she was lucky, and that's before taxes, before rent, before any normal living expenses. The math wasn't mathing, not even close. Her income couldn't have touched even half of what she was spending. To Harry, the conclusion was unavoidable. There'd been financial backing behind her climb the entire time, funding each flight, each outfit, each membership, each carefully orchestrated appearance in rooms where she had no business being otherwise. Money had been flowing in to turn Meghan into the woman who would eventually meet a prince. By this point, Harry felt like his entire world was being rewritten behind his back. But he wasn't done digging, not even close. One morning, after another sleepless night, he did something he hadn't done since right after the wedding. He went into his office, opened the bottom drawer of his desk, and pulled out the official wedding guest list. All 600 names, organized neatly into sections by his team and Meghan's. Harry had never really studied Meghan's side before. Why would he? He trusted her. These were her people, her friends, her family. He had no reason to question who she invited or why they mattered to her. But things were different now. He was seeing everything through a new lens. He spread the pages across his desk and started going through them carefully. Not just skimming names anymore, but paying attention to who these people actually were, where they came from, how Meghan knew them. Marcus Anderson, right there near the top, seated prominently where he could see the entire ceremony. Harry's stomach tightened. Jessica Mulroney, Soho House regular. He'd met her a few times, always thought she was just one of Meghan's close friends from Toronto. Misha, no new, the woman who supposedly arranged their blind date. Also a Soho House member. Harry had never thought twice about that detail before. Serena Williams, another member.
She is still trying to convince us that she and Harry are having the most fun.
Sitting with the other celebrities, but connected to the same club, the same network. Then Harry started seeing faces he recognized from old photos. People he'd seen standing next to Meghan at Soho House events years before he even entered the picture executives regulars, people who'd been photographed with her at parties in Toronto, New York, London. Harry got up, walked to his desk drawer, and grabbed every highlighter he could find. Yellow, pink, green, orange. He went back to the guest list and started marking names one by one, methodically. Anyone with a Soho House connection got highlighted. 10 names, 20, 30. He kept going. When he finally finished, Harry leaned back and looked at what he'd created. Out of roughly 200 guests on Meghan's side of the wedding, over 60 were directly linked to Soho House, more than a quarter of her entire guest list. And here's what really got him. These people weren't childhood friends, not co-workers from Suits or old friends from her acting days in LA. They were her network, the people who'd watched her rise through that world. The circle Marcus had built around her. Harry felt his pulse racing as he pulled out his phone and scrolled through wedding photos. Reception shots, candid moments, pictures he'd looked at 100 times with completely different feelings. Then he found one that stopped him cold. Marcus standing near the bar with 4 men in expensive suits. Harry enlarged the image. Soho House executives. All of them. He recognized 2 of the faces from articles he'd read during his research spiral. They were holding champagne glasses, smiling at the camera, like they were at a celebration they'd been planning for years. The kind of smiles people have when something they've worked toward finally comes together. To Harry, his wedding suddenly took on a different meaning.
He never leaves because he wants her to attack his family. Even though
it wasn't what he'd thought. 2 people in love starting a life together. It felt more like a reunion, a gathering of everyone who'd been part of Meghan's journey through that elite world Marcus controlled. And Harry, he was just the final piece they'd all been waiting for her to find. Harry wasn't sleeping anymore, not really. Maybe an hour here or there before his brain would kick back on and drag him right back into the spiral. Food didn't taste like much either. He'd sit at the table, force himself to eat something, but nothing registered. His mind was somewhere else, searching, connecting dots, replaying everything he thought he knew on an endless loop. But there was one thing he'd been avoiding. One place he hadn't looked yet, even though something inside him knew he needed to. His voicemail archive. It hit him one afternoon out of nowhere. A memory he'd buried so deep he'd almost convinced himself it never happened. William had called him multiple times before the engagement left messages. And Harry had ignored every single one of them. Deleted them without listening or listened to 5 seconds and hung up in anger. He'd been so sure back then. So convinced that everyone wanted to ruin his happiness, control his choices, keep him from the one person who actually made him feel seen. Harry picked up his phone, fingers unsteady, and opened his voicemail app. Started scrolling, past recent messages, past recordings from last year, further and further back through time. His thumb moved faster, searching through years of saved and deleted recordings, reminders from staff, random notes he'd left himself. Then his finger stopped. November 2017, a voicemail from William.
Meghan's such a snob. She thinks she's like a design expert. But they've got lazy boys all over the place in this real...
One Harry remembered seeing pop up on his screen while he and Meghan were out to dinner. He remembered his jaw clenching, that flash of anger rushing through him. His brother, once again, trying to interfere, trying to tell him what to do with his life. Harry had marked it as read and never touched it again. Or at least he thought he had. But it was still there, sitting in his archived messages like a ghost waiting to be heard. Harry looked at it for a long moment, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Once he pressed play, there was no unhearing it. No going back to the version of reality where he could pretend William had just been jealous or overprotective. He pressed play anyway. William's voice filled the quiet room. Calm, steady, but there was an edge underneath, almost like desperation. Harry, you need to listen to me. I know you don't want to hear this right now, but I'm asking you as your brother, please just listen. There was a pause, like William was choosing his words carefully. I've learned some things about Meghan's past, her years in the Soho House world. Marcus Anderson's reputation, it's well known among people who run in those circles. He's not just a friend, Harry. He positions people. There are photos of her at events with men from your world going back to 2014. This doesn't look random. I'm not trying to hurt you. I just need you to look into this before you propose. Please. The voicemail ended. Harry sat there in complete silence, the phone still pressed to his ear. Then he played it again, a second time, a third time. William's tone wasn't angry, not controlling either. His voice was almost scared, like he was watching his little brother walk towards something dangerous and couldn't get him to stop. Harry felt his chest tighten as he scrolled further through the archives. Found another voicemail from a week later.
And that is what I heard about her being told to leave. There were issues with the sponsors.
Pressed play. And that, Harry, it's me again. I know you're not going to like this, but Meghan's been showing up at events connected to your charity work, events you weren't even at. I need you to ask yourself why. Marcus Anderson's name keeps coming up in the same circles, the same rooms. I'm not making this up. Just please talk to me before you make any decisions you can't take back. Another one from 3 days after that. I'm not going to keep calling, but I need to say this one more time. Whatever you think about me right now, whatever you believe my motives are, I'm your brother. I'm trying to protect you. That's all this is. Just be careful. Please. Harry closed his eyes. He'd erased all of these, deleted them in anger, convinced William was sabotaging his relationship out of jealousy, that William couldn't stand seeing Harry with someone who actually loved him. But that's not what this was, not at all. William had been warning him, doing everything he could to save Harry from walking into something he didn't fully understand. And Harry had shut him out completely, slammed the door in his brother's face and locked it tight. Most nights now, Harry lies awake in bed, eyes open in the dark, unable to turn his brain off. The house is quiet around him, everyone else asleep, but his mind won't stop. It just keeps going, replaying the same scenes on a constant loop. He thinks about the past 10 years, moments that felt special, coincidences that seemed lucky at the time, introductions that led somewhere important, the yacht photo that started all of this, the Soho House bag sitting there in plain sight, a detail so small most people would never notice it. But once Harry saw it,
that King Charles's lawyers are in negotiation for a divorce from Harry and her.
Everything else started unraveling. Marcus appearing in background photos from 2013, 2014, years before Harry and Meghan even met. Polo matches Harry barely remembered attending charity galas where he'd shown up for an hour and left. Private events he'd forgotten about entirely until he went back through old photos, and there Marcus was, in the corner, near the edges, observing but never front and center. And Meghan, at events tied to Harry's world, showing up at gatherings connected to his charity work, his social circle, places where she had no obvious reason to be unless someone knew Harry's schedule, where he'd show up eventually. The money that never made sense, $70,000 a year minimum, probably more. Flights, clothes, memberships, hotels, styling, all of it funded by someone who wanted Meghan moving through those elite rooms. The wedding guest list with 60-plus Soho House connections. Random friends, childhood buddies, or co-workers? No, a network. The people who'd been part of her climb from the very beginning. William's voicemails that Harry deleted without listening. His brother begging him to look closer, ask questions, just slow down for 1 second before making a decision he couldn't undo. And Harry had shut him out like he was the enemy. All of it, every single piece, laid out in front of him now like a puzzle that finally makes sense. In Harry's view, the timeline tells a clear story. Meghan didn't stumble into his world by accident. She didn't just happen to be in the right place at the right time repeatedly. To him, it looks deliberate. Step by step, year by year, funded, guided, positioned closer to his circle. Marcus was there for all of it, introducing her to influential people, making sure she showed up at exclusive events, teaching her how to fit into rooms where she didn't belong yet.
She's probably worth about $6 million on her own for her acting career. I didn't know what she was acting in, but
That little American hussy.
Building the network that would eventually bring her within reach of someone like Harry. And then there was the blind date, set up by Misha Nonu, a Soho House member. Someone else in Marcus's orbit. Harry had thought it was spontaneous, romantic, fate now. Now he wonders if anything about that night was left to chance. Harry rolls over in bed, pulls the covers up, tries to force himself to sleep. But the question won't leave him alone. Was any of it real? How they met? The connection he felt? Things she said that made him feel seen in ways he'd never experienced before? The life they built together or thought they were building? Was any of that genuine? Or was he just the final name on a checklist Marcus and Meghan had been working toward for years? To Harry, Meghan didn't fall into his world. She climbed, rung by rung, introduction by introduction, event by event, hand in hand with Marcus Anderson, who knew exactly where Harry would be and when. The boy who'd spent his entire life wanting someone to choose him for who he really was, without the title, without the family name, without what he could give them just for him, finally understands what happened. He wasn't chosen. In his mind, he was carefully selected, approached at the perfect moment when he was vulnerable and desperate to feel loved. And that realization? It's the nightmare Harry lives in now, what keeps him awake when everyone else is sleeping. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. When the pieces fit together, you can't pull them apart and pretend they never connected. And Harry? He sees it now.
Both Meghan and Harry have a degree of what some people would call almost psychotic energy.
Old photos that used to make him smile. Memories that felt warm and now just feel hollow. Moments he treasured that he can't look at the same way anymore. What he's discovered doesn't set him free. It just traps him in a past he thought he understood but never really did. Harry spent his whole life wanting something simple, something that shouldn't have been too much to ask for. He wanted someone to choose him for who he actually was, without the prince title, without the family name, the royal connections, the access to power, without the photo opportunities, the headlines, or what his last name could do for someone's career, just him. The person underneath all of that, the guy who wanted to be seen, to be loved, to matter to someone without all the noise around it. Growing up the way he did, Harry never knew if people genuinely cared about him or just what he represented. Friendships felt like they had an asterisk next to them. Relationships came with questions he was too afraid to ask out loud. Do you actually care about me, or do you care about what I can give you? And then Meghan came along. She made him feel different, seen, understood. Like maybe finally he'd found someone who wanted him for the right reasons. Someone who looked past all the royal stuff and just saw Harry. That feeling meant everything to him. It drove him to fight so hard to keep her. That's why he shut out William. Why he ignored the warnings, deleted the voicemails, pushed away anyone who questioned what was happening because he couldn't bear the idea that he was wrong, that this wasn't what he thought it was. But things look different to Harry now, and the way Harry sees it, understanding what happened, doesn't set him free.
Moved house maybe 10, 12 times. We've apparently divorced maybe 10, 12 times as well. So
it just locks him in a cage he can't escape. In his mind, he wasn't chosen. He was identified, found, approached like a destination someone had been moving toward for years. The boy who wanted to be loved for being himself had become a goal on someone else's checklist. And that realization haunts him in the dark hours of the morning when sleep won't come. It sits heavy in his chest when he looks at old photos. It whispers to him when he tries to remember the early days and can't tell anymore what was real and what was performed. This is Harry's nightmare. Not knowing, never being certain, seeing patterns everywhere he looks and wondering if he's really on to something or if he's just broken something inside himself that can't be fixed. Because here's the thing about patterns: when you finally see them, they don't go away. When the pieces click into place, you can't shake them apart and pretend they never fit together. The picture is there now, clear, unavoidable. And Harry? He sees it everywhere: the smile he treasured, the stories that made him laugh, moments he thought belonged to him, really to him, that now feel like they were part of someone else's plan all along. He doesn't know whether he'll ever get real answers. Would Meghan tell him the whole story if he asked directly? Would Marcus admit to anything if confronted? Would the people at that wedding reception, holding their champagne glasses and smiling like they'd won something, ever explain what they were really celebrating that day? Maybe none of it matters anymore. Maybe the damage is already done, either way. What Harry believes, or at least what he thinks he understands, is that the boy who spent his entire life wanting to be chosen for who he really was never got that, not in the way he needed. Not in the way that would have healed all those years of wondering if he mattered beyond his title.
Prince Harry's astonishing threat to his own wife in a podcast with
And that's the hardest part: the money, the network, the calculated way it might have all been orchestrated. Those things hurt, but they're not what destroys him. What destroys him is simpler. Harry will never know for sure if any of it was real. And that uncertainty, he'll carry it for the rest of his life. So that's Harry's story, at least that's how he sees it. Whether it all happened exactly this way or there's more to it we don't know about, that's for you to decide. But one thing's for sure: once you start connecting dots like this, it's hard to stop seeing them. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story got you thinking, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Thanks for watching.